Meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay. You want to read the call? I don't think I have my.
Am I red or blue? You want it to be red? Okay. Dear Supervisor, please be advised that the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors will meet at 7 p.m. on August 19th, 2024 in the county boardroom. All county board members' claims are due in the county clerk's office by noon on August 5th, 2024, so they can be prepared for audit committee approval. Sincerely, Paul L. Severson, County Clerk.
Okay. Certify the open meeting law requirements been met. Proper posting and notification. Roll call. I think everybody's, Wallen's not. You want to call the roll?
Yep, Bridget Turner. Here. Stacy Klein.
Here.
Richard Seisha.
Here.
Lori Severson.
Here.
Andy Todd.
Here.
Richard Anderson.
Here.
Kevin Adams.
Here.
Dick Miller.
Here.
Kevin Whalen. John Austin.
Here.
Dawn Waldera. Here. Robert Becker.
Here.
Renee Lyon.
Here.
Kellen Nelson.
Here.
David Larson.
Here.
Jeannie Nutter.
Here.
Ron Johnson.
Here.
16-1.
Okay. Agenda, would like to change item 7, the closed session, move that down to 9 between C and D. If that's okay with everybody. Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda
Move to approve,
as amended. As amended?
as amended.
Okay. Motion made and seconded to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Unanimous, previous minutes. Any questions on the previous minutes? If there is none, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Anderson, seconded by Ms. Nutter. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Cool. Okay, appearances. Administrator update.
All right, I'm going to step in and move into our administrator update. This was shared with the Executive Finance Committee group already, and I'm sure that you've heard some of this already, and now I lost my screen. Here we go. So I want to, of course, we're talking about how we're moving into budget, and we need to be grounded first in some of the information, again, that we've been talking about and thinking about as we design the budget, and talking about shared revenue and how shared revenue has been stagnant over the past 20-plus years or declining. Last year, we saw a substantial increase. Again, though, it's over 20-some years that we had seen declines, and actually 23 years later, we saw $122,930 less in shared revenue. So you can imagine, compounded over 23 years, the results of that. Sales tax revenue over the years, we've seen that steadily increase, so that's a positive. Shared sales tax from the state of Wisconsin. We also have the 1% shared between all cities, villages, towns, and counties from the shared sales tax. We are still waiting to find out what that will be, but according to WCA, it will not be anything of real significance, but will be an increase there. Road aids, we do get road aids. We've seen some increases in that recently over the last few years. And then basically our ability to increase our budget is based off of net new construction. The state legislature uses net new construction to limit levy increases. The levy limit percentage is calculated by dividing the current year's net new construction by the prior year's equalized value of the county. This percentage increase allows a community or municipality to increase its levy over the amount that it levied in the previous year. And so we are at a state estimate of 0.72% right now, which is not good. But just to let you know, the state incentivizes then. That's basically what they're doing, is incentivizing economic development. The more development we have, the more that income that comes into the state. So they want to see revenues increase, right? So that's an area that they focus on. When focusing on and looking at our county and the changes that are happening, we've talked a lot about this and that shift in employment, the people that are of employable age and the people that are age 55 and older. This change in demographic age continues to shift for up until about the year 2040, when it finally levels off. So we know that it continues to get to see this happen. Our population has relatively stagnant or declining. Again, this is an area of increasing revenues, right? If our population grows, that affects our tax base. Depopulation is a real concern, and this is something, again, that I talk about and the urgency I feel in these issues. Because depopulation can have a significant effect on basically all of our services, the infrastructure we have, loss of tax base, businesses and not finding new people to start businesses. Just one case that we've talked about a little bit about, just touched on the surface, is the number of caregivers that we have that are available or don't have, which is very concerning. So, I share those things with you as I bring these conversations forward to think about how we need to work towards the future. So, in talking and sharing with you first, I want to share what has been the process of what's been happening. Oops, sorry, we'll go to the front. In working on budget, we first have discussed with staff and talking about reclassification requests. I put out, if you had a reclassification request or a new position that you wanted, please send those in and we would discuss those things. So, talking about focus and where my priority is, at least, and I want to stress kind of where my thinking is on this, is a focus on our existing staff, where our priority is on wages and benefits remaining competitive. Staff is our county's greatest asset. Wages and benefits need to remain competitive with surrounding counties. Enhance employee retention, therefore reducing high costs associated with hiring and retraining. And limited resources require that we evaluate then current positions carefully before adding additional staff. So where's our focus? Again, back on existing staff. So as individuals had requests for reclassifications, I held meetings with each of those department heads to talk about the reclassifications, looked at review of comparable data and the need initial information. It reviewed this with exec finance and bargaining committee at a meeting, have taken it now into more comparisons that are being completed with surrounding counties. Also did notify that we could possibly work with Carlson Detman for review. That is a bit more expensive, so we are trying to do that on our own and trying to get surrounding county information. But reclassifying positions when needed, and we're researching that, helps Trempealeau County remain competitive in the job market and retain employees. So just to touch on those, we had a number of these come through in child support, questioning if there needed to be adjustments there. All of those positions are grant funded at 66%, so it affects the levy less, except we need to look and see if there are some lower pay grade positions, which we are determining right now. Some of these positions may be taken care of in the natural budget process that we have if we're increasing wages, right? Highway Department, we have 3 positions out there that are account administration positions, and we're adjusting, so I'm I'm looking at the reclassification of the one position so that it would be consistent with the other two positions and the types of work that's being done. In the position of Land Resources and Parks, we had, I'm looking at the Land Records Modernization Coordinator as a title change and Parks and Recreation Coordinator title change. This is one that's kind of, we know the Land Management Director left. We did 2 other adjustments in that department for Conservation Manager and Zoning and Sanitary Specialist where they were adjusted because they became managers. These other 2 positions have done the same, where they are managers and have never been adjusted. Reclassification in the Health Department, Project Nutritionist, and LTE Breastfeeding Counselor. Those are both 100% grant funded. Again, notifying and working with staff and understanding if those positions are taken on, if funding was cut or lost at some point, then those positions would have to be eliminated. A human resources coordinator currently would be changed to a manager. In looking at having a county administrator along with a human resource director, I think it's really important to have the support staff for this position so that you're thinking about the future and how this position continues in the future and elevating that person to the human resource manager of our admin area to manage kind of the people there would be helpful. The human resource generalist right now, looking to change that position as we do move into more safety and training aspects of this position that we have lost, that we do not have at this time and need to focus more on. With our change moving over to the HRIS system, we hope to have the ability to free up a little bit of time for more education. And then in administration as well, I again did bring the Land Management Department and Parks Fiscal Office Manager up at that time when this change was made. This position has really focused more on an Office of Administration as a fiscal manager at this point, and job duties have changed exponentially and has really is more based off in an equal level of fiscal manager that we have in other departments. Then we have Corporation Counsel. An initial review of surrounding Corporation Counsel pay reveals a significant shortfall in our compensation. It's a critical position and really vital to our county. I can't say enough about Susan, but I would just say, of course, any corp counsel you're going to have in there, but you do have an excellent resource with Susan here. So we need further review to understand that and establish the competitive pay there, but I know that it is low compared to other areas. And when I'm looking at whether it's low, I'm making sure to compare right to comparable counties. And that's the same thing we did when we were looking at the clerk's pay and such. We compared to counties that were of comparable size to us and kind of in the same region. So then we had these new position requests. I want to go back to saying my focus is on existing staff. So you can't do it all. I've been telling, we just looked at what the budget constraints look like and all of those things. So I'm just saying this is my focus as I come forward. So I had administrator meetings with the department heads, discussions regarding the need for new positions, consideration, how to address new ways or different ways of funding sources and things that we could address some of the needs, because there are needs, right? I mean, we absolutely do have areas and pockets of, maybe we have too much in one area, but we know that there's a definite need in another. So we've got to try to think about how we're addressing the needs of the county. So I reviewed those with the exec personnel personnel bargaining committees as well. So new positions are not being recommended unless there are external funding sources available or current employees can help fill the need. Moving into these requests, the sheriff's office, a jail programming officer, great position, would work in the jail with individuals to help them get back up on their feet and out and connected into the communities. Maintenance, an additional custodian. I did talk about that position and going into construction at this next year potentially. Did not feel that was probably the best time to do this, and also looked at, discussed many other ways to look at how we used existing staff to change that, and they're kind of realign some of what they're doing. In the Parks Department, there was a request for a maintenance manager. I do believe that the Parks Department is not ready for change. It is too new. It needs to really develop strategy and understand better the whole vision for that department before making any moves in that area. Although the Parks manager is doing a fantastic job and he works very hard, and I don't disagree, but that is not ready. We need more strategy there. Zoning, asking for a planner. We have identified funds that are already set aside that we have set aside in previous years that are there and available for planning opportunities. So it's easier to just contract that out, I believe, and rather than hire someone for that. The Health Department has requested a public health nurse, and that position, again, is grant funded, so she's looking forward on how that could be moved forward. And then the District Attorney's Office asked for an office assistant, where I discussed with him the possibility of that happening and his interest in having an additional district attorney added on. I think I will go into this. I wasn't sure which slide was next. So in talking about that, UW Extension reorganization then is one thing that I looked at, and looking at the office coordinator, and that position would become a split position. Half-time with UW Extension, half-time with the DA's office in working there to pick up some of the help that they needed. And then the horticulture educator position is currently open. Community development, that's an area still under some discussion, but we have a community development and tourism, an economic development tourism staff member. Plus, we have, you have now hired a county administrator, so they tend to work on economic development as well, community development. So, but that is for discussion continued. Land Management Department, I am not including the position that, we did not fill. I do believe that those individuals that have been elevated in that department are doing a nice job, and they're managing what they need to manage, and I think that can continue at this point. Whoops, sorry. Then we have the Digital Media Department reorganization. This is one area that I'm sure you've had some discussions about. So let's go into that, because that's a little bit more information that I would like to share. Again, I think when we're talking about this, I'm going to go back to this, because this is critical information when you're thinking about any changes that we're talking about making. Do you want to be a self-sufficient county that's emphasizing economic development, and the state incentivizes that you're increasing revenues? So what I've heard a lot of is that we cut, and we cut, and we cut. And any business I know does not focus on just cutting to make high profits. They also look at their revenues. And how do we increase revenues? Our revenues are directly tied right here, sales tax revenue. What we get from the state, what they're going to give us, and you can keep on pounding on their door, and I hope that you do, because maybe they'll continue to increase that, right? And help us out. But the other piece is this economic development piece of that net new construction. And there are, what I'm suggesting is that you have to put things into place to actually make economic development happen. It doesn't happen easy. It's not just throw your fish in the line, your line in the water, and you're going to catch a fish. It is hard work. You don't know, you can have a conversation 1 year, 7 years later, and I've done it. And it's very difficult work, but it can happen. But it's a lot of hard work and a lot of conversations. And so I'm going to bring forward to you strategies that I think that need to happen if you want economic development to happen here. Again, if you don't want economic development to happen here, that is, that is not, you're going to be waiting for handouts that aren't coming. And so this is, one thing you have to consider. So I cannot figure out how to get my, there we go. Here's my screen. All right, so in talking about the media change that I was interested in and there we go. So let's talk about the basics first and why I'm saying this is an important area of focus. Because of the rise of the information age, right? I'm sure you're all aware of that. There's expectation for real-time responses and information that we give to people that we expect, and there's a need for government bodies to adapt to those changes and do it now and quick and easy and be ready. I don't know why I can't get that to come. Okay. Okay, there we go. Government can position itself for greater success by prioritizing and investing in strategic communications. So what we do now is current, it's cable TV, our newspaper, YouTube. Why am I suggesting less emphasis on cable TV? Notice I didn't say no emphasis or no cable TV. I said less emphasis on cable TV. Because there's a decline in cable TV viewership. You just can't deny it. It's limited audience reach and engagement. There's high costs and low return on investment. And quite honestly, there's a decrease in attention spans for all of us. We're used to quick information right now, right here, and we need shorter content. It does us no good to go out and record 2-hour meetings, 2-hour things and post those things, because I can guarantee you very, very few people are watching it. What's the power of adding more digital media? There's a broader reach with diverse demographics. Are we only here to serve the 1% of people that are here? I think you know the answer to that. It's not about that. And again, if you're going to correlate back to what are you doing to be competitive, do you want to be competitive, then you need to really think about these things. You have real-time engagement and interaction. It's cost-effective and measurable outcomes. I know instantly how many people are looking at things and reading and clicking on things. And then you can create engaging content in short videos. What are the benefits of digital media for government communications? You have increased transparency. You can provide real-time updates and information, improve public trust, engaging directly with constituents, enhanced responsiveness, addressing issues and questions promptly, greater accessibility, reaching a wider audience, including younger demographics that we are not reaching right now. So using social media, that's all of the things that we hear about, Facebook, what used to be Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is for professionals, it's for business or for jobs, right? If we want to build workforce, we want to be connected through LinkedIn. We need community engagement and feedback and opportunities to tell the story that we're doing here. So digital media and economic development and tourism is extremely important. Again, I'm tying it back to economic development again. You can do campaigns to boost tourism and local economy, highlight community events and success stories with short videos and photos. It's not to get rid of those things. Instead of doing a half-hour or hour show on a fishing segment that's being done, we're going to do a minute. And we're going to post it on all of these social media pieces. And instead of 5 people watching it, we're going to have 1,000 people watch it. And so, and then hopefully grow that so that it's more than 1,000. So there's lots of success stories around this, a lot of government bodies that do this. We can definitely follow what's our return on investment for this. But we need to invest. Sometimes to grow things and grow our budget, it takes investment. And so there is some investment here. But let's just talk about our cable TV subscribers at this time. We put a lot of focus on this number that keeps dwindling, and we're down to 3,100 people that access this channel. So with a total of 30,899 approximately on our population, about 10% of people are subscribers. We're missing over 90% of the county population. And actually, when I dove into this deeper with the cable company, the viewership is actually 1.8% of the cable lineup shows. It's one of their worst watched television stations. In fact, they were very surprised. An average of 5 people are watching at one time. The highest number of viewership is 55 people, which we can tie directly to church service. So just to think about that as well. I only put that out there because, and this is up to you, but again, church and government, I don't think it's a good idea. I think you put yourself up for risk in lawsuits and things, but that's just something to consider for yourselves. And certainly you haven't had anything to date. So current TV studio budget, here's what we did in '24. So my proposal is to restructure the department, and as you may have heard, eliminating the 2 current media positions, creating a communications media person. These are individuals that would have the opportunity to absolutely apply for that position. Meetings are still recorded and they're added to the cable station and YouTube. The emphasis would be to shift to county digital communications to county residents, tourists, potential new residents, and workforce. Local communications include programming and promotion, marketing, tourism, talent attraction. This new position would have a strategy for the county and looking at creating marketing and communication strategy. You just can't justify 2 positions. You really can't. It's much more efficient. The time that you're spending on recording long recordings with virtually nobody watching those long recordings, as an example, I'll just share like the duplication of the school district recording a lot of the same things that we're recording. And then just this past weekend, Miss Whitehall pageant, or last week happened, we had our two media people there, the school district was there, and the pageant was there, and they were all recording the same thing. So I think it is a very large waste of county taxpayer resources when you're looking at some of those things. And again, we're not looking at getting rid of the cable station. There's just different ways to do it. We're taking a lot of time to edit programs that are brought to us for no reason. For instance, the church programs. I don't go to church and expect that church service will be edited in front of me, but that's what we're doing. You can just put church services right out there without editing. We spend a lot of time editing programs. And so I want you to be aware of where we can make things more efficient and make them better, but still provide information to people all across the spectrum. And so I want you to think about how we look at, again, being competitive, but still providing services to everybody. And our volunteers are still important. You can work with community members to also record content, as all of you are probably aware. You all have your phone with you. You can take a video so easy and share that, and we use that. So anyway, this is the projected piece of looking at how we would look at this differently with efficiency and targeted communications to grow revenues. Again, looking at economic development and tourism and how that changes. So that is a little bit of that in a nutshell. These are just brought forward to you again, just to think about, so that you are contemplating as we move into the budget piece, and I bring that forward to you. I want that to be transparent to you and how we think about how we move forward. So part of that change also comes with looking at our CIP, our capital improvements plan, And in the past, you've focused on 1 year of borrowing. What we worked on then was, I asked department heads to give me all of their costs that we would have over the next 5 years that they would have in each department. And we would lay it out into a 5-year plan then for what is needed so that you have a better idea of like, what are all the outstanding things that are out there that we have to think about. When you're looking at this, this is, again, this is a proposal, okay? I want you to, can you pass that, please? And, so, I worked with, yeah. I worked with Steve Corbell from Government Solutions. You want that too? You've already seen it. And Brian Riley from Ellers, just to take a look at where we are in debt right now. What does our debt capacity look like? You took on a big project, of course, with your project on the government, or the Justice Center. So I'm gonna introduce or hand it over to Brian, if he can kind of bring up his discussion and talk about, if you look at your, I like to look at the color, but I also had passed out here just a breakdown of the numbers right in front of you, if that's an easier preferred way that you like to look at. So if you look at the colored area, the 2025 goes on to the, all sheets here. And one area that we focused on was really looking at highway. And what would it look like to take care of the roads projects that we need to be looking at how they turn over every 30 years and keeping those on a schedule. I've also added in 2025 the possibility of a building renovation fund, not knowing where we would sit on that building renovation plan next door. But also looking into the future in how we might look at economic development projects and how that would position the county. Again, totally up for you, discussion and for you to think about as we move forward, but that's a lot of counties invest, I'll just say invest, right? Because if you want to see growth and maybe that's not a part of the bigger problem. We haven't done strategic planning, so I'm assuming that that's a part of what we want to do. But if you want that, I strongly believe it takes investment, and if we invest, the public invests. And so that's the vision that I share with you. And what that looks like would be further discussion and such. So I will now pass it over to Brian. Sorry, Brian.
No apologies necessary. All good context. And I'll point out, we'll look at a number of scenarios here in relationship to financing a capital plan, which are largely, I believe, comprised of road and bridge projects. And I think you also alluded to the renovations to the existing county facility that I think to date are of the budget that was already established. And so really funding specifically those two things, I would focus a little more on the number, because all of you as the board and the associate committees have some decision-making authority in terms of what projects to fund. Fundamentally, those both constitute long-lived asset improvements, and so it would be financed over a relatively the same period of time. So am I okay to share my screen, or do you have the handouts in front of you? I'm happy to do.
Yep, if you could share your screen, that'd be great.
You got it.
I should have made copies though.
All right, are you seeing the, no? How about now?
Yep, we can see it now.
Okay. All right, very good. So as I had referenced, we'll walk through a handful of assumptions here, one of which being $7 million in potential capital costs for fiscal 25. I'll talk a little bit about timing, but adoption of the capital plan in the past, especially as relates to highway and bridge projects, has been accompanied by what I'll call an authorizing resolution of the board to issue debt. And that requires 3/4 vote of the board. And so at that point, it doesn't bind the board to anything other than that board has essentially not only adopted the capital plan, but also taken action to set the stage for its funding by way of potential debt issuance, which would come in the next year. Once you issue the debt, the interest clock starts ticking, so it makes the most sense to align that with the point in time where you actually need the dollars to spend and not too much in advance of that. So again, this does assume that any debt is issued in 2025. As far as the cost of that capital, we've been very conservative in our estimates. Since this was constructed, interest rates have been relatively stable to down, and so I would argue we're even more conservative than when we started. So there should be no concern there that we're dialing things in a little too tight. There are many different ways to view things from a debt repayment perspective. I think I've alluded to the fact previously that when the county issues debt, you're afforded quite a bit of latitude in terms of how you structure the payments. And by that, I mean, these are not consumer loans. You don't walk into the bank and say, I would like a loan, and they tell you, okay, this is what your monthly payment's going to be for this many years. We can structure things around your existing levy to mitigate some of the impact associated with the debt service and the tax impact to property owners. Will become obvious here as we look through a few scenarios. And so understanding that we've built things really kind of in a two ends of the spectrum sort of style. We could get a little more aggressive with one of those. It's not necessarily something that would be advisable, but we've built long-term issues for both being 20 years and full term. That's the maximum allowed under law. They could always go shorter. In fact, you have done that in the past. That was generally in anticipation of the very large borrowing associated with the Justice Center project. So we were able to essentially do shorter terms on road and bridge financing to the tune of $5+ million, understanding that we would then be able to take on a $41 million financing in a net neutral tax impact scenario. Having said that, when you borrow that much over a long period of time, the levy for debt service gets what I'll call flat in terms of the dollar amount generally stays the same over a number of years. Although not that long ago, there was some financing, which we'll see here, that was relatively short. And we do have the opportunity to kind of wrap around that in that we could structure the debt looking at your existing levy and where there are some drop downs in future years associated with debt being fully retired at certain intervals. And so I hope that becomes a little more obvious as we're looking at a couple examples here. If debt is issued in 25, the first payment would be in 2026. So again, interest does start to accrue from the date of closing, but you're not required to make a payment in the same fiscal year that you issue, especially if it's paid from the tax levy. You really have no source of funding because you can't levy and collect a tax in the same calendar year / fiscal year. Okay, so this is really setting the stage for the two scenarios that I'm describing. And what we're looking at here is your existing dollar amount of levy for debt service. So you do have general obligation debt that has been issued for things like the healthcare center. The healthcare center pays for that. Pretty much everything else by way of general obligation debt is paid from the tax levy. So what you're seeing here, the blue bars are the dollar amounts. Again, in 2023, there was a general obligation promissory note issued for road and bridge projects. And so that's where you can see the step up for a 5-year period. At that point, that particular issue is fully retired. And then you drop down. So you go from about $3 3/4 million, 23 to about 4.6, 4.7 million payable in 2024. And then you're pretty much there for the foreseeable future. The orange line and the associated numbers associated with it is the tax per $1,000 of equalized value. One complicating factor is that when you levy taxes, the math is largely based on equalized value. When you spread it out across the tax base, it's done on assessed value. So it can be felt unevenly, but we have to really arrive at kind of a uniform impact in terms of, equating the dollar amount of a levy to your total tax base. And so in 23, that was $1.25 per thousand of equalized value. In 24 and ostensibly beyond, it's a little less than $1.50 per thousand. So out of your total millage, right, we're looking at debt service only here. Out of your total millage, roughly $1.48 per thousand is comprised of debt service only. Now that's going to change over time as the tax base grows. This projection assumes no growth in your tax base. Even from levy 23 now to levy 24, your value has gone up. It's a little harder to see immediately at the moment. Adjust these numbers to reflect that. The tax rate, barring an increase, would go down ostensibly with increases in value. The dollar amount is fixed, as the debt has fixed interest rates and it has known payment requirements out to their final maturities. As you can see then again, there's another step down from 32 to 33. Once you get to 33 and beyond, 100% of that debt service is the Justice Center project at roughly a little more than $3 million plus out through 2041. Again, there were cognizant decisions made as we reviewed where you presently were and where things were likely to go in the not too distant future. We did arrive at a little bit of a kind of a wraparound solution for a few years, and then it really got flat out until 2041. Again, that's not uncommon when you borrow something for a generational project of that size and scope. And just kind of touch on a few things below it. I just want to point out that the levy for debt service is unlimited by rate or amount. So there was a long discussion about all the limiting factors associated with your tax levy, and all of them are true. Your levy is largely limited by all the measures that were pointed to, and then the potential for increase is almost entirely related to net new construction. So there are adjustments that are allowed to your levy. One of them is the levy for general obligation debt service, and there really is no limitation under law in that regard. So we have seen over the roughly 20 years of levy limits, maybe just a little less, that there has been a bit of a shift from a capital equation perspective and funding it to debt versus a pay-as-you-go methodology where it is funded from the dollars received out of the levy that is subject to the limitation. Next page looks at one of the two scenarios. This one is the new debt, $7 million financed over 20 years. And this one has level payments, all right? And what is this looking to do is to demonstrate to you what is the impact of that from both a dollar amount perspective and a tax impact perspective. We'll sum this up at the end with a little juxtaposition based upon estimated property values, so you can see it in a little more distilled fashion. And so what you see here is, again, issue the debt in 25, first payment in 26, the $7 million over 20 years equates to about $550,000 in an annual debt service requirement. The levy for debt service would increase to just under $5.25 million. And from a tax impact perspective, go from $1.48 per thousand to about $1.66. Again, I will point out, this assumes no growth in the tax base. If there is some growth, typically then the tax rate impact would be nominally less. You have a very large tax base, and so even when you divide, $500,000 plus into that, it's probably a few cents on the dollar if you change the value here up slightly. If we go to the other solution, being what I'll call the wraparound solution, you can see the distinction here in that initially the payment requirement is less. And that's essentially paying interest only for a handful of years, in this case, 3. And then we pick the payments up and they increase from about 300,000 to about 600,000 thereafter, and they become level at that point. So we've tried to minimize the upfront impact, understanding that going from 28 to 29, we've got some room there to kind of bring the number back up. We're not necessarily taking so much advantage of some of the other step downs in the structure. That could be done as well. I will point out, as far as the last bullet on this page goes, there is no free lunch in that regard. When you take advantage of these things like a wraparound structure, where instead of going to $1.66 per thousand, and rather than, in this case, $1.58 per thousand, the tax rate impact is less. But the only way to achieve that is to defer principal, and you push back principal in the structure so that on average, the life of the debt is a little longer. As a result, you're going to pay more interest. And so what's the cost of a decision like this is about $360-some thousand over the 20-year term of the debt. So that's not huge in the context of $7 million, but it is not free to make these sorts of decisions. But there is a sense typically that oftentimes when you have tax levy, debt paid from tax levy, oftentimes there's a point of view to mitigate the immediate impact to taxpayers. As you can also see, we have to have a mind about the future to some degree. And you can see where some of these solutions better lend themselves to potentially the next phase of borrowing. Or if we kind of know what the capital plan looks like, we can take that into consideration with the current borrowing and try to build in these places where you can layer on new debt. And again, try to mitigate the overall tax impact. We can't know what the values are going to be over time, but creating a plan that has a more of a long-term strategy, a multi-year strategy, does make it easier over time to build in additional capital costs that are financed through the use of debt. As I mentioned, then the last page just sets out a table where you can essentially look scenario to scenario tax impact based upon taxable property values ranging from, in this case, $100,000 to $2 million. And so when you look at the 18 cents per thousand increase related to the level payment structure on a $100,000 property, that equates to about $17.65 a year for that property taxpayer. If you look at that with the wraparound solution, again, it's a 10 cents per thousand increase in the tax rate. That's about $10 a year. If you get all the way up to the $2 million mark, you're looking at about $350 a year to the level impact, or about $200 to the wraparound solution. Again, we could build many scenarios, but we really just kind of want to get you focused on two to start with, and get any kind of reaction as you may be proceeding forward with your capital discussion. It's not necessarily assumed that you're going to do any financing, but this at least provides you some information to understand what that would mean to the budget, and most specifically to the dollar amount of the levy and the potential tax rate associated with that levy for debt service. I foreshadowed a little bit with the long-term capital planning and budgeting. I would say that in terms of additional capital financing for long-lived assets, there has been a point of view to try to shorten those up as much as possible to really reduce the amount of overall interest expense. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Understand that the shorter the life of the debt, the greater the annual payment requirements will be, and thus the impact of the levy and the tax rate will also go up as a result. Understand also that when you issue long-term debt, say anything from 15 to 20 years in term, there will be a point in time where you can freely prepay. And that's an all or some situation. That's not an all or nothing situation. And so if you were to accumulate cash and you did want to reduce the amount of debt outstanding, as well as the interest associated with it, you could take those moments in time to either refinance and shorten the structure up, or you could apply some cash. You could do both. Those things become available to you. Certainly, we're never going to look at a situation where you're financing any asset beyond its useful life. So things like road and bridges should be longer than 20 years. Facilities improvements, again, should be the same. I recognize that they can be bits and pieces of those improvements that may be shorter lived in nature, and we can compartmentalize in terms of the overall debt structure. I'm doing that with a number of clients right now, where they're financing vehicles and equipment in the same issue as something like a fire truck or a building that has a much longer useful life, and you build schedules associated with those individual pieces that underlie the total debt structure. So I'll pause there and turn it back over. I'm happy to respond to any comments or questions as well.
Yeah, any questions? I guess this is, again, just to have you have the opportunity to see these things and look at them and ask questions over the next, let's see, we still have a couple months. So, but does anybody have a question for Brian or?
I have one I'm going to try to ask. Out of all your charts, I didn't see anything there that shows the total cumulative debt over, we're looking at a 5-year plan. Granted, we can't commit to beyond our term, but I'd like to see some type of a chart that shows the overall debt, because we're talking right now 7 million a year over the 5-year period. That's a total additional debt of 35 million. Where would that fit within future payment proposals?
Sure. I'll throw a few numbers out. I have all this information and I can distill it into a graph. And some of that would be having a notion about what the trajectory of future capital project financing might look like. So as of right now, and just back up for a second, I think to your point, there are limitations on the amount of general obligation debt that the county can issue. It's 5% of your total equalized value. If we look at the year 2024, you have about $95 million available to you. That's more than half of what you could do under state law. I'm not arguing you leverage all of that by any means, but I'm just letting you know what that number is. At the end of this year, you'll have a little under 70 million outstanding in total. For the foreseeable future, you're going to be paying off $4.6 to $5 million a year over the next 5-6 years. And so if you were talking about something like $7 million a year, that would represent net additional borrowing over and above what you are paying off. Borrowing capacity itself would probably not be a constraint. And so one of the reasons also why I didn't focus on it initially, have some plans a little more baked and kind of look at these things. I would say more importantly, is any potential rating impact. We want to make sure you remain at the level that you are, because you do get favorable financing as a result of your current rating. And so being mindful of not just how much you have outstanding, but how much of your total budget is comprised of fixed costs like debt service, pension contributions, things of that nature, where no matter what, that payment's going to be there year in and year out. And so you lack a level of flexibility in that regard. So you kind of have to throw all of these things into the level of analysis. But just wanted to give you some high level detail with respect to the principal amount of debt that you presently have and what that might look like over the next 5 or 6 years without any new issuance.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian, I've got one question for you. You had mentioned a couple times our assessed value would increase, and it would help us with our payments. But wouldn't it be more fair to say that if the assessed value went up, it would be chewed up by inflation and just operational cost increasing? That'd be more of a fair statement, would you think? Because I don't think there'd be a whole lot of money, extra money after operational cost and wages and everything. I think that would chew up any inflationary or any increase in our assessed value. What do you think?
I would break that into two pieces. As values go up, it kind of depends on the where of the tax base are going up, residential versus commercial versus, say, manufacturing and industrial. And then how does the tax levy get spread among those various pieces? The last few years, residential values have gone up more than some of the others. And so proportionately, they end up carrying more of the tax burden than had been the case as before that commercial values were going up. I would say nominally or marginally more. And so it's about how the tax load gets spread. That's very hard to solve for. And then I would also get back to the notion of, yes, if costs are going up, but you're not really experiencing net new construction, and all that's happening is really, values are kind of going up also as a result of that, it's going to be hard for you to fund what you need to pay for, because net new construction is what's driving the increases to your maximum allowable levy. And so debt is also a part of that. But putting all of these things together, it's hard to arrive at this is what it would look like. This is where the problem lies. I mean, I think more than anything else, the biggest issue the last few years has been the level of cost increase and the fact that that has not necessarily been equated with corresponding increases in net new construction. And so when you're getting a few percent on your allowable levy, but the cost of everything is going up 10 or more percent, that's really where you're getting squeezed for sure. So that does keep a lid on the levy to some degree. It makes your lives very difficult, but then it's tough to know what the interplay is with your tax base at the same time.
Did I answer your question? Any other
Probably not.
questions? Any other questions?
You're in a difficult situation, and so is every other taxing authority for that matter. Thankfully, the shared revenue increases were timely and they're indexed to increases in sales tax revenue at the state level. Who's to say where that goes? I think long-term over time, you derive the bulk of your revenue from the property tax levy. And so there's all these kind of bits and pieces that are in play that are really squeezing the budgets for jurisdictions just like yourselves.
Okay. Any questions at all?
Thanks, Brian.
Yep, thanks a lot, Brian.
Thank you all.
Any questions of Rebecca? Not, we'll move on. Oh,
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that one of the suggestions that Becky had before had caused quite a stir, and I had quite a few people contact me on it, and one did write a letter, and I sent the letter out in everybody's chair, that it was so well written, I just thought it was nice. That was her opinion on the TV studio, I would say budget that Becky had brought up. So I mean, I appreciate Joni writing it and just letting everybody know that I've had a lot of people contact me on it, and they've all been against it. They like watching it, so, but I just wanted to put that out there, so.
Sure, that also probably for several of us, but I've gotten several either phone calls or people coming to me too. I'm sure us two are not the only ones, so.
I've had probably 50 calls myself and
I've had a dozen more.
several emails, but it's still, like you said, it's not to end it, it's just to change it.
I would say that I've had some contact with people from the community as well, but what I'm finding is they are not understanding the proposal. They're thinking that the cable television station is going to end in its entirety, and that there isn't going to be publication of the meetings and some of those other things, which are not true. So I've been trying really hard to make sure to educate these people when they are reaching out to ensure that the community really understands what we're proposing.
6 people that contacted me. They weren't from my district, but they were all for the whole promotion of it. And they actually were some folks that were over 65, which I was kind of excited and impressed about. But they had just thought that they wanted to make sure that somebody from some supervisor really kind of understood it, or at least would be open-minded about it. So they did understand the actual concept of it that Ms. Wildera explained quite nicely, and I think that's the education piece is huge.
Okay. Richard?
Yeah, I had 5 people contact me as well. A couple of them, I talked to them, called them back after I talked to
back there and got an understanding myself, and of course, they read some into the papers, so hopefully next week, they'll read the paper and maybe get a true understanding as to what you're trying to implement, and hopefully they'll be happy.
Okay, we'll move on to item B, District Attorney.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate your time tonight. I'll be brief. Channel 18 has a big place in my heart. I had a call-in show when I was in high school back in about 1998. So, I'm very fond of it. But I do think it's wise to kind of be looking toward the future and not eliminating this important kind of institution or a link for a lot of folks, but also I think it's good to have our county administrator kind of looking toward, what lies ahead and not just kind of basing us in the past for the sake of tradition alone. But yeah, looking forward is a good idea. So thanks everyone. I'll be brief. In terms of what the district attorney's office is up to is kind of business as usual. Our caseload remains pretty consistent with how it's looked for the last 6 to 7 years. This year, we filed about 170 felony cases so far, 115 misdemeanor cases, and a number of other criminal traffic matters, for a total of around 550 cases filed in 2024. That puts us kind of in the same ballpark as previous years, where we usually file around 900-ish cases, criminal cases, and DHS connected cases for the year. So we're on track for filings consistent with 22, 23. 21 was a big year for filings, just I think with COVID driving every case type up. Last update, I was asked about our DHS numbers, our CHIPS cases, our GIPS cases, Children in Need Protection Services cases, relative to some neighboring counties, and I had a chance to look into that a little bit and receive some pretty interesting information. I would note that I think last time I was here, we had no CHIPS filings for the year, which was anomalous in the time that I've been here. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that I think requires a little explanation and exploration. And I think as Jay Hine noted, it's part of the Families First program that's being pushed by the state for a number of trial counties, and that program pushes DHS entities to focus more on informal interventions, support within the home, support without filing a formal CHIPS petition, in order to keep those filings down, keep formal intervention down. It's a trial. It's difficult to say whether or not this is a good thing for the community or a bad thing for the community. I think it's probably a two-edged sword. Obviously, it's a good idea to keep kids in the home wherever possible and remove kids or formally get involved only as a last resort. However, we can't pretend that the problems don't exist, and I don't think that doing nothing or ignoring unsafe environments for kids is an appropriate or safe answer either. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what the numbers show in the years ahead about this Families First program. I bring that up because comparing our numbers to two kind of similarly situated counties, Jackson County and Clark County. Jackson County is not on the Families First pilot program. Clark County is. And I think that the numbers reflect the change in disposition or change in orientation toward cases. I will note that since last I was here, we've had 12 CHIPS filings, so we're from 0 to 12. And that's, things can change quickly when you have larger families and you get involved with one family and there are, 4 children, 5 children, that drives the numbers up pretty quickly. So we're up to 12 Children in Need of Protection Services filings for 2024. Comparing that to Clark County, which is a little bit smaller, but also on the Families First program, they have 9 children in need of protection services filings for the year. So kind of in the same ballpark as them. Compare that to Jackson County, which is not part of the Families First program. They have 35 filings so far in 2024, and for 2023, they had 65 cases. That's consistent with the kind of numbers that we had in 2018 in Trempealeau County. 2018, we had 67 CHIPS filings, 2017, 47, 2016, 32. I think that in terms of having the effect of driving numbers down, this Families First program is doing that. The sort of net good yielded by the program, I think will be analyzed in the years ahead. Like I said, I think it's a two-edged sword. In terms of what's next for the DA's
Can I
office.
address
Oh, go ahead.
something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me address something before I forget. When did the county enter into the Families First program? What month was it?
That's a good question. I think it was sometime late last year. I'm not entirely sure. That's a question for Jay or Trish at DHS. I'm at the bottom of the chain in terms of the program, and I can't speak to the specifics involved in it other than to say that it's focused on keeping kids in the home, putting community support in place rather than making referrals to the filing entity, whether it's Corp Counsel in certain counties or DA's office in this county.
Could that have been the reason why the numbers were so low up until this point? The fact that they entered this program and they were assessing how it operated in those particular cases.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what's keeping our numbers, or that's why our numbers are low. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing that our numbers are low.
Okay, but you mentioned something about, are we ignoring the problem?
I
think you may be misleading us here. I assume that if this Families First program is definitely involved with these families, we're not ignoring the problem necessarily.
Well, the type of intervention is different.
But that's not ignoring the problem.
Well, I think it speaks to the amount of resources and formal systemic attention that's focused on these families. There's less accountability when the formal system actors are involved. When there's not a court order in place, there's less formal accountability. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I mean, it is a reality. When there are less system actors involved, whether that's social workers, whether it's folks in the district attorney's office, whether it's the judge, whether it's law enforcement, it changes the nature of the intervention, and it's a less formal intervention than when a person is put through the formal CHIPS process. So I'm not saying that we are ignoring the problem. I don't think that we are. I think that it's important to reflect upon the type of intervention that we're providing, whether it's in the formal CHIPS filing process or through a less formal kind of Families First intervention type. It's important to reflect on what we're doing to ensure that we're not ignoring safety issues in the home.
Okay, thank you.
That is what I heard you say too, Mr. Sasha, was that not that we are ignoring the program, or the problem, but that we need to follow the numbers to ensure that what is being put into place is effective and that we aren't having an issue where we're not addressing things if that's warranted. I think that's what I heard you say.
No, that's absolutely correct. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all. I think, on the contrary, keeping kids in home whenever possible is a good thing, because removing kids from home creates a real emotional scar for children taken away from their parents. However, there are homes that are unsafe, and at a certain point, safety necessitates a formal intervention, whether that's a CHIPS filing or whether that's removal from the home. So I think it's important to kind of reflect on what all the options are and exercise the options in a way that's kind of tailored to the safety need for the families. Yeah. Yes.
Are you looking at me? Mm-hmm. Okay, I just want to clarify that when Intensive in-home services are provided to families through this program. Safety assessments are done on a regular basis. There's a format for workers to assess safety while kids are in the home when there is no CHIPS order. So in my humble opinion, as a previous CPS social worker, there is a lot of accountability for families to the people who are providing services to them and to the ongoing social worker that's monitoring these families. So I don't want people to get the impression that kids are just willy-nilly staying in families without court orders or, out of home placement. One of the things that has happened in Trempealeau County is foster care placements used to be out of 40 50 kids we were looking at in out of home care, and every single dollar in out of home care is tax levy dollars, and it can really bust your budget. So I give a lot of credit to our Department of Human Services and the workers that are providing these intensive services to families, and kids are not left in unsafe environments by and large, because it's a part of the program is that you do an ongoing safety assessment.
Thanks for that. And I don't suggest that lower numbers mean less safe kids in the county. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. However, I think it's important to reflect on our practices and ensure that we're doing the right thing. In terms of what's next for the department, next month we have a regional truancy meeting with school superintendents, school officials. I think Sheriff's Office is going to be involved in that also. I'm pleased to say that for this year, our truancy numbers are down, or I guess for the last school year, numbers are down relative to what they've been. I'm going to find out more about what's going on to drive those down at the end of September. Looking forward to that. I think that we did create a number of kind of formal processes for intervention that kind of were spearheaded by Gallup Trempealeau, and I'm hoping to kind of roll out some of those to some of the other districts for this next school year. So with that, does anyone have any questions? I don't want to take up more of your evening. All right. Thank you very much, guys.
Can I get clarification on the agenda for Dawn for the minutes? Are we moving 7, 8, and 9A below C? Because we just said move the closed session below C, but I'm assuming we're moving all those below C, just for her clarification for the minutes. Correct? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. What? That's all right. So. Well, it's been a little bit since I talked to you about numbers last. A lot of people like to hear what the numbers are, the activity of the Sheriff's Office in numbers. The last time I was here 3 months ago, I brought a couple of my staff with me to talk about the badges program and what we're doing with that, and that pretty much took up my time and maybe more than what was allotted. But I want to get some numbers back in your hands here today, and you all have the printout in front of you, but I'm going to go through it just for the sake of our viewing or our listening public here. In the previous quarter is May, June, and July, and in that quarter we had 3,178 calls for service coming into our dispatch center for Sheriff's Office issued calls. And I don't necessarily mean that it's actually a phone call that came into dispatch. It also includes traffic stops that the deputies make or process services. So it's not all paper services, but it's everything that generates at least a call for service within the county. Considering all municipal police agencies within the county, that number goes up to 7,924 of incidents that were started in this county. Not all required an investigation or a case follow-up, but that's the activity that's going on entirely in Trempealeau County, basically counting traffic stops and calls for everything from, the most minor barking dog complaint all the way up to crashes and drug investigations and whatnot. So we do get pretty busy in this county for having only 30,000 people. Some crime data, death investigations, we did 9 in the previous quarter, made through July. That does include the homicide, and then 8 other death investigations that could be suicide, it could be an unwitnessed death. Somebody comes home to find a family member deceased in the house, and that is the activity. We've done that in the last 3 months. Drug abuse violations, there were 16 that resulted in case numbers being taken out. That number is substantially lower than normal, and I'll just point out that it's something that I would discuss in closed session. I'm not going to bring it out in open session, except for it's a temporary issue that will be corrected. So. Simple assaults, that's your disorderly conducts, maybe a pushing, shoving match or somebody yelling at somebody, very, very minor disorderly conduct type events. Burglary, 4 we had 4 thefts and 0 motor vehicle thefts. Those numbers are all pretty comparable to the previous quarter that I reported on. If I had the side-by-side numbers, you'd see that, except for number 2B, they would all be very comparable. Crash data, again, this is comparable to the first quarter, but you'll see we had a total of 192 crashes called into the sheriff's office. 106 of those are deer crashes that were called in, but only a fraction of all deer crashes are called into law enforcement right now. Just because people can go online and self-report. Typically, they're still required to report it to us, but it doesn't necessarily always happen. So 106 is a little bit low, probably for the total number of car deer crashes that occur in our county. 65 property damage crashes, 17 injury crashes, and of note, 4 fatalities in the last 3 months. Our average annual crash fatality number is probably around 4 or 5, if even that. So we've had a very busy quarter, and that's 4 different crashes too. Not like a couple of years ago, we had a number of crashes, but 2 or 3 of them were multiple fatalities in that single crash. These are all single crash events resulting in single fatalities. Some enforcement, the sheriff's office issued 177 traffic citations, 11 non-traffic citations, and those could be for trespassing or retail theft that maybe wasn't pushed up to the district attorney's office on a criminal charge. There's a number of reasons we would issue those types of citations. 241 warnings were issued, and then we did have 11 OWI arrests. 7 Chapter 51s, and that is just the county. Again, that does not include the municipalities. There are a number of those Chapter 51s that result in the county have to get involved in as far as transporting. We are required by law, basically, that we're responsible for transporting from the hospital facility back to court when the court hearings take place. So while we have 7 Chapter 51s that we respond to, we do get involved in more than that typically because of the transport requirements. Some jail numbers. Now these are a little bit unusual from previous reports. Today we had 49 inmates in our jail. That's been typical since about May. 49 to 55 is probably an average in the last 3 months. Instead of 16 inmates out of county, we have 16 inmates in our jail from other counties, contracted. The last time I can remember us doing that was when I first got hired. Back in 1989 and 1990, we were housing inmates from Walworth County Jail. So this is a very nice turnaround, finally. That resulted in revenues of $20,000, give or take a little bit, for May, June, and July. So we're nearing $60,000 in revenue. That already covers my overage from back in February when we had to move all of our inmates out to another county. So things are looking good there, and I'm glad to finally report that, I guess. So we do have 1 on electronic monitoring, and no others in non-contracted out-of-county jails. That would be something like somebody who's sentenced to serve time in our jail at the same time they're serving time in another jail. Sometimes those run concurrent. They get credit for it even though they're not sitting in our jail, so. 4B, ACH statistics. I wanted to have some numbers for you about our medical numbers in the jail. You're going to see here in coming weeks and months that the medical budget in the jail is astronomical. And I want to share with you some of those some statistics from our health people. ACH is Advanced Correctional Health, and that's the company that we contract with to manage our health and mental health incidents in the jail. As far as vacant positions goes, we're not unlike any other counties, other than we're probably not as bad as other counties are seeing it. Currently, I have 3 positions open in the jail. 1 female will be beginning field training within the next week or so. We had a resignation just last week in August that was effective last week here now, and we have a retirement coming up in about 2 weeks. So I have 2 brand-new inmates coming off of field training, and I have 1 going into field training, and soon to be 2 more. So, what's that? Well, we do have inmates working in the jail, so. That's, what did I say?
You said you have inmates in training.
Well, they're training to take care of themselves, so, yeah, we have new employees in training.
You were just seeing if we were listening.
Yeah, I'm not listening to myself, apparently. It does bring up an interesting point, though. I don't know if you all know, but we do have inmates working in the jail. So, in the kitchen, when we opened up the new jail and brought all of our inmates back here, the numbers would have required an additional kitchen staff if we didn't hire, or if we didn't use our inmates for inmate labor. So in the kitchen and in the laundry, we are using inmates for labor, and they get credit on their sentence for the time they work in those positions. So there is some inmate training going on constantly, because the average stay in a jail, as you know, is probably 7 days, 8 days, and so they're not here very long, and then we got to train somebody new to work in those. So I knew what I was talking about, it's just in the wrong context.
I do like we have an actual functioning kitchen that's you can actually use now, unlike the old small pink kitchen that I remember.
Yes, so some of you new members probably didn't see the old jail. I don't know if you had or not, and for everybody listening, I really wish that you could see what the difference is between the old and the new, just what Kevin is speaking to. The functionality is night and day, and it brings that safety concern way down for both staff and inmates, so.
Not to mention the color, that's kind of a side effect, that was kind of fun.
That was back in the early 80s, so. One thing not on your list here, it would be letter D under vacant positions, is my emergency government director did express a desire to go back into the dispatch center, and I did accept that. So he is now working in the dispatch center, and we will be working to get a replacement in emergency government here in the near future. The line right below it where it says note interviewing for all 3 disciplines tomorrow, I did not update that before I sent it out to you today. We're actually interviewing next week, Thursday, for jailers and dispatchers. So patrol staff, I have 1 opening. However, I have 1 in the drug and physical stage. So within the next week or so, I'll be offering a job to that person. So then we'll be at, I'm not going to say it out loud. So every time I do, it changes. So.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yes.
Pertaining to the jail. When we have out-of-county prisoners being confined here, who picks up the medical costs for those? Do the other counties do?
The home county. And it's the medical, the trips to the hospital and the costs related to the hospital, minus pharmaceuticals, is direct billed to that agency.
Okay,
Pharmaceuticals, we are billed for it, we pay it, and then we invoice them for that. So they pay all the costs associated with health of their inmates.
Okay. Now, as that revenue comes in, and maybe I can address this to Rebecca, as that revenue comes in, like you say, it's $20,000 a month for the past, 4 months?
Yep.
How is that revenue handled?
So it's a line item in our jail revenue budget. It goes directly back into the general fund. It just reflects an offset of what's levied in the expense budget, so of that year. It goes at the end of the year, basically whatever's left and unspent on my budget or revenues, all revenues that come in, for the most part, go right back to the general fund. The unspent expenses will do also, so.
But you are, as you budget for next year, you will estimate probably
Yes,
what revenues may be coming in via this
yes,
source.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Brett, how is the current staff handling? I mean, you're up to close to 50 inmates probably. Has that been an issue at all?
It was to start with. If you remember, when we started bringing back all of our inmates for those first couple of weeks, and they were learning the process, I actually had to slow down and even stop the numbers coming back into the jail so that they could just get acclimated. We are, that was February 19th, so we're, 6 months into it, and they all tell me that the learning is going very well. And I don't, I'm not hearing the frustrations like I was early on. So when I talk to them, I'm over there visiting, and when I talk to them, they seem like they know what to do, where to be, and the changes are I guess being met. They're adapting to those changes, and as time goes on, I'm hearing less and less of it. So, but I will say, having a full staff of veteran employees is a lot different than a full staff of new employees. The new ones are learning from zero. The veterans had to change their ways, and that's what makes the frustration. So I take my hat off to all of them. They've all done very well as far as I'm concerned over there, and I have to thank them for embracing this. It was thrown on them, but they had to embrace it, and it's going very well. Like I said, if we had a full staff of veteran employees, I would probably have more inmates from out of county in there right now. I'm still taking it kind of slow just because I don't want to bombard the new inmates with all the extras that come with. And the jail, we're going from a 30-bed jail potentially to a 96-bed jail. The staffing levels of the current facility, or the old facility, were sufficient for the new facility, except for the programming officer that I've been talking about. So we should be able to do it with the same numbers, as long as they're well versed in their job and have the experience needed to be able to continually do that every day. So.
What's the update on the dispatch center officially moving over to the new wing?
That is a very good question. I did not have that on here tonight. So, as you know, the dispatch center has not moved, and we were hoping that was going to be up and running in the new facility by the first part of June. And that had actually got pushed back this spring even, so to the first part of June. But they have not been able to, or they had not been able to get the equipment from overseas. It was the technology that comes from China and Taiwan, and they just weren't getting it. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, all of the new 911 equipment showed up, and the radios aren't far behind, so we're just waiting for a project manager to be assigned from the Department of Military Affairs to install our new 911 system. Hopefully, we're up and running by the end of the year, but I'm not sure if that'll happen or not, because we don't know when they're going to get started. But we're
In the right
I think you'd see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yes. So.
Hey, Brett,
Yes.
if you're okay with me mentioning, we also got to look at the idea of what was brought up in our meeting is we're actually saving 250,000. I want to say $250,000 on not going out and taking our inmates to other places on top of the 240 or $250,000 that we're making.
Yeah, that is correct.
So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, that's correct. My budget for this year reflects that already. I had already taken out that piece, so, but in theory, though, yes, this is, $400,000 or $500,000 turnaround potentially. Yeah.
Thanks, Brett.
So just some notables I'll mention here that, like I said, it's been a little bit of a busy third quarter, yes. May 7th, we had a pursuit that started for a vehicle traveling 102 miles per hour for who knows what. We talk about pursuits and the dangerousness of them. This is a case where this guy was driving like that regardless. It didn't matter. He was already putting the public at risk. Resulted in a pursuit that ended up in La Crosse County when they put out the road spikes and terminated it there. May 7th, we had ICAC as Internet Crimes Against Children. We had an ICAC arrest of a subject who was already on bond for a similar incident back in December of last year. And when I say Internet Crimes Against Children, it's primarily the downloading of child pornography. So we had a repeat offender within just a few months of the first arrest. May 13th, in Trempealeau, we got the call of an elderly male had been walking along the tracks and was struck by the train. We had a very difficult time getting to that. It was very remote out west of Sullivan's, out in a remote area. We're preparing for how to get a coroner out there and how we're going to get the body out of there. And it turned out that he was conscious and lived through the event. So not many people can say they get hit by a train and live by it, but we were fortunate to have that type of an incident. So May 15th was the homicide. Sheriff Anderson would understand the amount of resources that goes into that. It's not just May 15th. That went on for probably 3 or 4 weeks, utilizing just about everything we had for resources. So that contributed to, again, a very busy quarter. April 11th, most of you may have heard that where we had the child was burned by a pot of scalding water that apparently fell off a stove. I believe that's what happened. But that resulted in the caretaker or caregiver being charged with some criminal activity there related to that. So July 10th, we had a fatal UTV crash in the town of Ettrick. That is one of the 5 fatalities that's reported. No, excuse me, the next one is. But the fatal UTV crash was not one of the 5 motor vehicle crashes. But on July 27th, we had a tractor ride in the town of Ettrick, just a few tractors out on the road, doing a little bit of a drive, and they become motor vehicles at that point for some statistical purposes. A Mondovi man lost his life in that accident. And then on July 27th, again, the same day, a drug arrest that was just a simple traffic stop up on Interstate 94 in our area of the 4-mile corridor up by Osseo, resulted in the seizure of 30 pounds of marijuana and a pound of methamphetamine, which is, a very significant seizure. So just some of the bigger things we were involved in that quarter. Again, we also had deputies working for Automotion and Wisconsin Dells. That is a mutual aid type of request, but we get reimbursed for every dollar spent down there, including the fringe benefits, wages, fringe benefits, mileage, and lodging and meals. So we respond down there to help them. We had Ashley for the Arts, and in return, a lot of those agencies come here and assist. That is an Arcadia Police Department thing, but again, that's how those things give and take. That's why we help them, they help us type of thing. And then the Trempealeau County Fair takes a number of our resources as well. So along with almost all community festivals are in that quarter as well. We had Whitehall and Ettrick and Blair yet to come, or now and moving forward, but the most of them happen in that quarter. So a couple of weather-related events, wind and rain in the quarter, so it kept us very busy. So we'll go ahead. There's no limit.
No limit?
Sure might.
Well, there may be.
Three.
The lights,
as far as I'm concerned.
The lights go out at 9 o'clock. With the UTV, this has been a real controversy to approve people riding legally on the roads. Have there been many accidents or crashes due to the UTV type vehicle on the roads, public roads?
This incident was an off-road incident.
This was off-road.
Yes, and since, we've got all but I believe 2 townships opened up and all county roads right now, and I'm not seeing anything as a result, anything that is increasing or significant as a result of that.
Good.
Our
Glad to hear that.
complaints coming in are nil, and incidents that we're responding to are usually off-road type of events for
I
those
remember
vehicles.
when this first went to the county and I was with the town
Absolutely, it's the unknown. But at the time, I did survey a lot of other sheriff's offices across the state, and they who had implemented already, and they were finding the same thing. I was reporting that these were what these sheriff's offices are finding, and that's kind of what we're seeing now after it's been implemented. So,
Okay, thank you, Brett. Is there any other questions? Yeah, all right.
thank you.
Good. We have Mississippi Health Services here, update with Bridget Turner.
Yeah, I promise I have a little bit better news than what the sheriff had, and I will be short. I did hand out, you all received, hopefully, the handout for the Mississippi Valley Health Services Commission. I was lucky enough to have somebody that had this and shared it with me, and I thought all of you might appreciate knowing something about it. I was elected to the commission and knew nothing about it till my first meeting. So if you have any questions, you can either contact me and I'll get you in touch with someone, or Lakeview's executive director. But basically, the commission was started in 2006 because of rising costs, and the Medicaid, Medicare supplement insurance was not keeping up in paying for facilities. So along with La Crosse County and 12 other counties, they created this commission. And what it does is, for those in need of medical services, whether it be nursing home, dementia care, a variety of things, Lakeview, which is in West Salem, we can work with La Crosse County and through this commission and have a member rate as being part of that commission, one of the counties. So it saves the county a lot of money in the short term and the long term. We meet actually just once a year, and we basically get together, we look over the audit, see the financials of Lakeview, and then what we do is, based on those numbers, we set the coming year's rate for patient stays. Interestingly enough, the rate last year was $145 per day, per bed. This year, because of some increases in some reimbursement rates from the federal and state government, we're able to drop it down to $110. It benefits our county because those that are not part of this 13 county commission will have to pay $220 for patients. So, and that's all I have for you. I just want to give you an update and let you know
questions?
it's out there.
Any questions of Bridget? No. Good, thank you.
And now I am the new secretary for this year, so. I'll let you know at the end of this year.
I'd like to go to item 9B, move that up, the rezone exclusive ag to commercial for the Semitic town of Birdside. Now, somebody from land use, oh, she is. here.
Verge is here, yeah.
Hi, Verge.
Do I need to read it first?
Yeah, I'll have her read it.
Whereas Dallas Semitic Independence petitioner landowner has requested the rezone of a parcel of land in the town of Burnside for the purpose of erecting mini storage buildings. Whereas the rezone is on approximately 1.04 acres, more or less, and whereas a public hearing was held pursuant to section 59.69, parentheses 5 of the Wisconsin statutes, and whereas the town of Burnside supports the rezone request, and whereas the Environment and Land Use Committee moved to rezone this parcel from exclusive agricultural to EA2 to commercial C, and it appears that the zoning change request is appropriate under the circumstances. Now be it resolved that the county adopt the attached ordinance amending the zoning district boundaries as indicated, introduced by Environment and Land Conservation Committee, Andy Todd, Dave Larson, Kevin Whalen, Randy Severson, Tony Munson, and Stacy Klein.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded. We'll have any questions, direct them to Verge. Any questions on it? You want to explain it anyway, how?
Well, the resolution explained it pretty well. It is a rezone from exclusive ag to commercial. Because it is a change to the official zoning map is why it's presented to you tonight. The land was designated floodplain, but Mr. Semitsik worked to get that removed from the floodplain. At the public hearing, there was a party that came forward and was concerned about traffic and safety. The location of this property is about a mile or so west of Independence on County Road X. At the hearing, the gentleman wasn't sure exactly where his driveway was going to be. Since that meeting, we've got confirmation that the driveway will be off Scrub Valley Road, which is off of County Road X, so it will not be on County Road X. So I just wanted to confirm that for our committee as well as you. Any other questions?
Go ahead.
Just to add to that was a good thing they moved it, the driveway to Straw Valley Road, because the visibility coming out onto X was not very good. And the commissioners said he was not in favor of it, but it was good that they worked together on it, so that, for the safety of the people of the county, so that's good.
Okay, thank you, Verge. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. I guess we gotta do a roll call on this. Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Renee Lyon.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seisha.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yeah.
Dawn Waldera.
Yes.
Resolution passes 16-0.
Okay. Go, Exec Finance Committee, the disallowance of a claim. Read the,
That,
you got that one?
no, that's closed we gotta do closed session before that. Do you wanna do
Oh.
this law enforcement one? Yeah, the law enforcement one first.
Oh, okay. Item C, Law Enforcement Committee, increase the reimbursement of process service fees by Child Support Agency.
Whereas the Trempealeau County Child Support Agency enters into annual cooperative agreements with the Sheriff's Office, the Clerk of Court's Office, Corporation Counsel, and the Family Court Commissioner to provide services in support of the Child Support Agency. And whereas the annual agreements recite the required duties and responsibilities for each cooperative agency and the Child Support Agency, and they also provide for reimbursement of costs incurred by those agencies. The Child Support Agency reimburses each cooperative agency for services provided and is then reimbursed by the State Bureau of Child Support for those costs at the rate of 66%. And whereas the Sheriff's Office provides personal service of documents and transportation services for individuals who are incarcerated under civil and criminal child support charges, and whereas Wisconsin Statute 814.70(1) allows the sheriff to collect a fee of $12 for each service or attempted service unless a higher fee is established by the county board under Wisconsin Statute 814.705(1)(a). And whereas it would be appropriate to reimburse the sheriff's office for process service at a rate that would help with the increased costs of fuel and time spent by law enforcement personnel to perform each service. And the departments have determined that a fee of $65 per service or attempted service is reasonable. Now be it resolved that as allowed by Wisconsin Statute 814.70(1) and 814.705(1)(a), process service fees charged to the Child Support Agency by the Sheriff's Department be set at the rate of $65 per service or attempted service effective January 1st, 2025. Introduced by Law Enforcement Committee Ron Johnson, Stacy Klein, Dawn Waldera.
Move to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Johnson. Second by Supervisor Waldera. Any discussion? Mr. Miller.
How often is this particular figure looked at?
Evidently, it's been quite a while.
Do you, okay. Well, I guess I would recommend to those on law
Penny
enforcement.
is here if you want her to.
Oh, yeah. Penny, do you want to speak to that?
Good evening. Penny Welski, Child Support Director. This fee has not been changed since 2019. At that point in time, it was $32.50 a service. So we were looking at increasing it to $65 a time.
Okay. I guess I would just suggest that it maybe be reviewed every couple of years, maybe, to keep it up to date then, and
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions of Penny? I guess that's it. Okay.
Thank you.
No more questions? We have a motion and a second. Well, good to roll.
John Austin,
Yes.
Don Waldera,
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Renee Lyon.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seixas.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
16-0 pass.
Okay, it passed. Now I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session so we can discuss item 8. Somebody's got to read it.
Oh, this one right here? Yes. Sure, okay, so I make a motion that we go into closed section per Wisconsin statute 19.85 to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning a strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved regarding disallowance of claim from Holzer Estate.
Okay, and we had a second to that motion. We did have a second. Yeah. I forgot who it was. Oh, okay, Kevin, okay. That just, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. You got a roll call?
Aye.
You do, I think you do. Roll call for closed session.
Okay. Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seixas.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yes.
Don Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Renee Lyon.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
16-0.
16-0. We are now in closed session. Back to, we're in open session. It goes to Resolution 9A by the Exec Finance Committee, which is a disallowance of claim. You want to read that one?
Sure. Whereas Trempealeau County received a notice of claim on July 15th, 2024 through the county clerk's office, and whereas that notice of claim alleges that the estate of Billy Joe Halser and Michael Halser have sustained damages resulting from actions taken by the Trempealeau County Highway Department and/or the Trempealeau County agents and employees. And whereas after Corporation Counsel's review of the matter and this notice of claim, that office recommends that this claim be denied in full pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 893.80. Now be it resolved that the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors denies the notice of claim in full, with the notice of claim and its denial being held as the same for both the estate of Billy Joe Holser and Michael Holser. Be it further resolved that Corporation Counsel may perform those steps necessary to effectuate this disallowance, including by sending copies of this resolution with the disallowance letter to the estate of Billy Joe Halser, Michael Halser, and by Goff and Rhodey. Introduced by Exec Finance Committee, John Austin, David Larson, Richard Seixas, Bridget Turner, and Robert Becker.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Supervisor Waldera, second by Supervisor Nutter. Any discussion? We just went through it in closed session, so all those in, oh no, this is a roll call vote again.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seisha.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
John Wasson.
Yes.
Dawn Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Renee Lyon.
Yes.
16-0, resolution passes.
Item D, Audit Committee member claims. Got that one handy?
I do. Whereas the audit committee has audited the following claims and recommend that they be allowed as follows. John Austin, $1,613.07. Kevin Adams, $60.05. Richard Anderson, $365.91. Robert Becker, $233.50. Ron Johnson, 0. Stacy Klein, $468. David Larson, $347.82. Renee Lyon, $150. Dick Miller, $121.44. Kellen Nelson, $67.42. Jeannie Nutter, $306.28. Richard Sacer, $269.68. Lori Severson, 0. Andy Todd, $462.60. Bridget Turner, 0. Don Waldera, 0. Kevin Whalen, $177.88, for a total of $4,643.65. Now be it resolved that the claims be allowed as shown, introduced by Audit Committee John Austin, Dick Miller, and Kevin Whalen.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion by Super Johnson, seconded by Supervisor Turner. Okay.
Richard Seisha.
I think he says yes.
Okay, I'll come back. Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yeah.
Dawn Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Renee Lyon.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
He's back.
Richard Seisha.
Yes.
The one I believe
If I would have
first.
done it in a deeper voice.
Resolution passed 16-0.
Okay. Appointments and notice of appointments, citizen member to the Human Services Board to replace Dora Jean Blaha. And I guess, have you got a letter to the fact?
Becky got it.
Okay.
Yep, I do have that. I'd like to just recognize Dora Jean Blaha first. She'll be presented a certificate in recognition and appreciation for her many years of service on the Trempealeau County Human Services Board, as well as other councils and committees representing Trempealeau County. Dora Jean has been a positive, wonderful, engaged citizen of Trempealeau County, has been exemplary in service to her community. So we really want to thank her for all of the time and commitment that she made to the Human Services Board. So from Jay Hine, Human Services Director, I've received a request to fill her position by Scott Brown, related to the board composition. Scott's a long-term resident of Trempealeau County, is invested in serving and supporting our citizens. And Scott is a current chair of the ADRC Advisory Council and is past president of the local chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I've talked with him many times and would appreciate that appointment being confirmed.
Move to approve his appointment.
Motion by Supervisor Nutter, seconded by Supervisor Johnson. All those in favor just signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's carried. Announcement by Brian Liga, Commander of American Legion Post, Chairperson for Veterans Service Commission.
Yes, and so
Your
look for your appointment as well on appointment by Brian Liga. Paul Bessler is timing out on the board, and so we're looking to appoint Brian to the chairperson for the commission. This comes from Joe Quackenboss through the Veterans Office.
Okay.
Move to approve
Motion by-
Brian Laga.
Motion by Supervisor Miller, seconded by Supervisor Turner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Carried. Committee reports.
They came out with your,
Uh,
they were sent out when we uploaded your packet, I think.
Everybody should have their,
Dawn had to do it for me. If you have questions, let me know or Paul know. He will be back Wednesday.
Any other correspondences you had? No. Only I had a lot of correspondence, but it was all basically over the closing of the TV station, which I think will be straightened out here, but that's everything I got, like 50 phone calls and 15 emails and letters. So anyway, item 13, need a motion to inspect the clerk to pay mileage and per diem. Motion from Supervisor Becker,
I'll second.
seconded by Supervisor Turner. Read the call.
Kevin Adams,
Yes.
Dick Miller,
Yes.
John Austin,
Yeah.
Don Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker,
Yes.
Renee Lyon,
Yes.
Kellen Nelson,
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter,
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Bridget Turner,
Yes.
Stacy Klein,
Yes.
Richard Seisha,
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yeah.
Andy Todd,
Yes.
Richie Anderson.
Yes.
That was good, though. 15-0, it still passes.
Okay,
Just can I make a quick announcement?
yes.
Just as a reminder on the bottom, it does say next meeting, September 16th, and then October 21. We do have a scheduled October 14th meeting as well, budget.
For the whole board, or just
Yes,
exec
for the whole
finance?
board. The exact finance is the first part of the month,
Oh.
and then, yep, the whole board on the 14th.
And that's at 6, right?
And that's at 6.
Yep.
So we don't have, well, we still have the day meeting in
We'll still have the
November.
day meeting, but
Yeah.
Becky's point is you guys can talk about your questions and
Okay,
stuff
okay.
during this one while everybody's not here and waiting.
Perfect.
And
So this
that
is
meeting
basically a
doesn't go
closed
2
session.
days and.
No?
Which, for what? What are
The
you talking-
14th one, it's not gonna be a closed session? No, okay.
Discussion budget?
On the 14th, October 14th at 6?
At 6.
October 14th at 6, she's gonna go over the budget with the whole board. Here. Yeah,
Like a
14th.
14th.
October 14th.
I know.
October
Stop it, we
14th,
don't
I
have
got
them
the,
all in
You're
yet.
getting me all nervous.
October 14th, I got another one, and dang. Workforce Development Board
Oh,
meeting.
jeez. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, but you're already, exec finance, you've heard it already.
Okay. We can officially adjourn this meeting at 9:13.